Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve on Saturday, July 17th, 2021. And we're here living and breathing another day. Great to be here. If you are just getting online here and joining us, we want to make sure that you say something, say hello so that we know you're here and we can acknowledge you. If you're tuning in later and watching the recorded version of today's show, also want you to comment, make sure that you join in the conversation. That's what Coffee Breaks with Steve is all about. We want you to be here and be a part of this. Hi, Mallory. Hello, Jerry Thompson. Good to see you both here. And yeah, it's interesting once again to think that we are halfway through the month of you see some of these comments that pop up, which are obviously moderator cat on here today. And I thank you, Chris, for doing that and for making sure that we're staying clean and clear in here, but also making sure that we have good comments coming from our side of it as well. Hello, Kim Baker. Hi, Lila. Good to see you both. You know, it's interesting because we've done over 100 episodes of Coffee Breaks with Steve, and yet every one still has its own. I still look forward to each one because of its unique characteristics. We have regulars who tune in, and sometimes just somebody who's showing up for the first time, and it's always fun to get new people in on the conversation. But I'm surprised. I'm still amazed at times at kind of how quickly the time goes by. That we've got this many episodes, that this year is going so quickly. 2021, we're already now midway through July. And it's just really interesting. Hi, Jay. Good to see Jay Zetterval, another good friend. You're all good friends. It's good to have you here. So, we're talking about mid-July, and we are into another very interesting, very dry summer in most locations. Oregon, California, Washington, Idaho, Montana, our western states dealing with drought conditions. And they're talking about some very severe situations in some areas. And we're faced here in California, in the Bay Area of California. We always think of the Bay Area and you assume San Francisco Bay, it's very wet. It gets very foggy over in San Francisco and on that Western Peninsula. And we don't stop to think about the fact that it really doesn't take much moving inland to get to the point where we're not getting any rain. And we did not get any kind of snow in the mountains, what mountains there are, but we still rely on that. And it could be a tough summer, both from the standpoint of drought and the standpoint of the fire season, which is already getting underway. So stay safe out there. Hello, Carla Venturi. Hello, Rick Venturi. Good sunny morning. Kim Baker came in with her good meowing. Happy Catter Day. Kim, I look forward to seeing that opening when I know you're on here to have you start that way. Well, it is July 17th. And once again, if you're tuning in, say hello. Join in the conversation today. If you're tuning in later, please do that as well. Hello, Kathy Garlick. So some special days this week. I'm actually going to mention some from last week too. By the way, thank you all for your grace in allowing us to have last Saturday off. No Coffee Breaks with Steve last Saturday. We had, I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But we were able to spend some time with the grandkids and have a fun outing that was pretty much an all-day event. But special days, tomorrow, July 18th, it's actually the third Sunday in July every year, is National Ice Cream Day. And if you, like I am, are a fan of ice cream, you don't need a national day. But this was actually a national day that was proclaimed in 1984. President Reagan proclaimed National Ice Cream Day. There may have even been, for all I know, it's probably National Ice Cream Week and National Ice Cream Month as well. But the 19th is National Daiquiri Day and also National Raspberry Cake Day. We're getting some good, this could be a refreshing week. I could see a little raspberry cake with ice cream on a la mode. And maybe you chase that with a daiquiri. I don't know. And we've also got, who's saying what on here? Yeah, exactly. Kathy Garlick says, no, I was allowed to take last Saturday off. Nobody asked her. No, nobody asked you. I learned a long time ago that if I ask my siblings what I should do, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes. All right, the 20th of July is this day in history. It's Moon Day, and that's because July 20th, 1969 was the first lunar landing. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walking on the moon. And if you were alive back then, as I was, being an old guy, you might remember exactly where you were when we got news that they had actually landed on the moon, and not too long after that, sitting in front of the TV and watching those first pictures from the moon. It's still something that stands in my mind, significant moment in history, right? There's an interesting TV show. I'm going to interrupt this. If you have Apple Plus, there's an interesting TV series. They've done a couple of seasons now. It's called For All Mankind. And it's one of those series that's an alternative reality, where it's fictional and, obviously, but what would have happened if the Russians had actually beat us to the moon in 1969? And that's where it begins. The first episode starts with this fictional alternate reality with the Russians surprise landing on the moon and televising from the moon a few weeks before the Americans were ready to get there. And the rest of the series kind of follows this alternate reality. What would that have done to the space program? And obviously it follows the characters that are developed. I've gotten into the show partially because of that era and the whole moon landing and NASA thing, but just because I also get a kick out of those kinds of shows. Apple Plus. Hi, Diana. Diana Wilson is on today. Good to see you. If I have missed saying hi to you, I haven't seen your hello, make sure that you do comment and in the chat so that we make sure we acknowledge you. So anyway, July 20th is National Moon Day, or is Moon Day. The 21st is National Hot Dog Day. That's always the third Wednesday in July. And National Junk Food Day. Once again, we're building up this repertoire this week of different foods. Kind of like National Ice Cream Day. Do you really need a special day, National Day for junk food? I don't know that we do. Hi, Corey Ann. These national days, I get it, because lots of times they are promoted by the industry that supports them, and it's a way to bring even more attention and to do marketing and advertising around it. I just find it funny sometimes, but I also enjoy finding these days. This next Friday, the 23rd, is the opening ceremony of the Tokyo Olympics, the Summer Olympics, postponed from last year because of the pandemic. And they're already, even now, they're dealing with continued problems with the pandemic, in that I think I heard that they have gone to no spectators in the stands. They were providing tickets, at least for people who lived in Japan, in the Tokyo area. And now they've completely shut that down. But everything will still be televised. And I'm going to tune in. I always enjoy watching the Olympics. So do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite or more than one favorite competition within the Olympics? What do you love to watch? Is it the track and field? Is it gymnastics? Is it swimming, diving, soccer? What is your favorite event in the Olympics that you really follow? Or do you have more than one? Do you just like to watch the whole thing? I always enjoy the opening and closing ceremonies to kind of see what production values they have designed for that. But it's interesting to also see. And of course, if you are one of those who cheers on the U.S. team to see how many medals we can win, the competitions where we have a better chance are always interesting to get into. So the Olympics start next Friday and go for a couple of weeks. I wanted to mention some special days, but because we didn't broadcast last Saturday, there were some things I would have mentioned that were this last week, and there's several of them in our family, so I don't want to overlook them. I just want to at least bring attention to them. Last Monday, the 12th, if you follow on Facebook, you saw some posts on this from me and from Carol, my wife, was our 41st wedding anniversary. July 12th is our wedding anniversary, 41 years. And I appreciate, Carol always says, she tells people that, she says, and I still like him. We do still enjoy being with each other. We still love each other. And 41 years later, it's still very, very special. Carol, I love you. And we'll continue. We're celebrating this weekend. We went out last night and had a date night. And that was a lot of fun too. The 14th is our daughter Shalann's birthday. Shalann just celebrated a birthday this last week on July 14th. July 16th, which was yesterday, is our son-in-law Jason's birthday. And so happy birthday to Jason. We did wish him a happy birthday, but belatedly online live, happy birthday, Jason. And also yesterday was Chelan's birthday was on the 14th. Chelan and Dustin's wedding anniversary, their 10th wedding anniversary was yesterday, July 16th, 10 years. And they are celebrating that. They are doing some special celebrating of their anniversary all this week. And then coming up this next week, there is a birthday I wanted to mention. My cousin Kay Hartley is celebrating a birthday on July 18th. So happy birthday to Kay. Okay, if you have a special day coming up this week, or if you had one this last week that I failed to mention, maybe I didn't have it on my calendar, go ahead and mention it in the chat so we make sure that we acknowledge you and celebrate your day with you. If you have one coming up in the remainder of the month of July, you can message me so I make sure we get that included in our special days as we talk about those. Deep breath, and got to take a sip here. Everybody, I don't think Chelan's here today, so I will say Chelan's not here. She's out celebrating her anniversary. Everybody drink. I need to stop talking sometimes for a few minutes to catch my breath and wet my whistle. And I want to just see what you're saying here. Yeah, cool. I love the comments. This is cool. And by the way, once again, if you just joined and I didn't say hi to you because maybe I overlooked it, I'm scrolling back through messages and I think I said hello to everybody who's currently on. But if you've joined the conversation and I have not yet said hello to you, say something in the chat. We're going to talk about life decisions today. Interestingly, even though she couldn't be here today, this was a topic idea of Chelan's. And major life decisions, that's one of those areas you talk about. It can get kind of heavy. It doesn't need to be, but you think about, there are a couple of different things in life. There are, what are the most stressful things that occur in life? And some of those are things that you don't have any control over. They just happen to you. Death of a loved one, a child leaving for college, those types of things. Those are just, you may have some choice in your child leaving for college. You can shackle them, but we're talking about the events that come up in life that you have to make decisions about, choices about, and they can be stressful. They can be overwhelming at times. And some of those are brought on by circumstances, not stounces. Hang on. Anytime that happens, I need more coffee. And so do you. Take the sip of your coffee, your tea, whatever you've got in front of you. Circumstances can happen to you or around you that require you to make choices, that require you to make decisions. There are also those things in life that you just start making choices and decisions on, and they're all based on circumstance of some sort, yes. But you think about some of those key life decisions that occur they require choices, and what are those choices and how do you deal with that? What do the experts say are the best ways to work through the anxiety, the stress, the indecision, the frustrations that can occur around making major life decisions? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But what are some of those, right? Think about them in your own life. What are some of the major life decisions? And the reality is there are some that are somewhat universal and generic. And there are others that one person may see it as a major life decision. Someone else is going, that's easy. That doesn't stress me out at all. If it's your major life decision, it's your major life decision. It affects you. And it can be something that is relatively short term in terms of the impact that it's going to have. It can be something that's a lifelong decision. So let's talk about what some of those are. You think about them. This isn't necessarily chronological, but I'm kind of trying to think back to when you're making decisions or you're making decisions in conjunction with people around you. One of the first ones that often comes up for people at a fairly young age is about college or about career decisions or trade school or enlisting in the service. But those things that are happening as you're reaching the end of maybe your high school, teenage years, and you're starting to make decisions about what's next. And often those decisions are being made with parents or others, but they're still, who do they weigh most heavily on, right? They're typically going to be most of an impact one way or another on the person making that decision for themselves. I remember going away to college, living away from home for the first time, really. And that had, emotionally, that impacted me. So college, going away to college. What about post-college, looking at job situations, applying for jobs, getting offers, especially the first offers, but it happens throughout your career. You're looking at career changes, job changes, going through a change like that, considering the next step in your career, major life decisions, choosing a life partner. It could be getting married. It could be just choosing to move in with somebody if that's the direction that you've gone. But you are now integrating your life with someone else's. It's no longer just you. You know, how does that affect your living situation? How does that affect your financial situation? Just a variety of things. Financial decisions themselves can have a big impact. Investing, making decisions to rent or buy, making the decision about where you're going to live. Is the rent too high? Am I going to buy a home? Boy, talk about a major life decision. Taking out that mortgage, signing all those papers, buying a house, and now taking care of that property and knowing what's involved with that. Starting a family, thinking about having children, adopting children. What are the impacts of those? What are the ones, as I'm talking about these, talk about some of the things in your own life that have been or are currently maybe even major life decisions. Retirement. You reach a certain point in your career and in your life that you're starting to look at the possibility of stepping away from that day-to-day career participation. What does that mean? Does it mean that you stop working entirely? Does it mean that you stop doing things? Does it mean that you're taking on some new things that you've always wanted to do? Some of the bucket list items are being done. You're going to travel. You're going to get into a hobby or some either vocation or avocation that uses your talents and your abilities in a different way. What are the major life decisions that have affected you? I can tell you about some in my own life, and some of the things I've already referred to certainly have had an impact and have been things that I have dealt with, that Carol and I have. That's the other thing. You have a partner in life, and it rarely, if ever, are the major life decisions things that you're doing solo, that you're addressing entirely on your own. Typically, when we're talking about major life decisions, there is another or others involved in that, either in the process of helping to make that decision, or in the impact it's going to have. If you have a family and you're talking about moving to another city, what's the impact on your kids? What's the impact on your spouse or significant other? How do those things affect, and how do you go about making those decisions? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Continue to put yours in the chat here, because you're going to be things that you have a different perspective on than I do. I would say some of the major life decisions for me were starting college, career, it's interesting because what ended up being my first career, 20-year career working in the insurance industry, was really on the basis of a part-time or a temporary job that I took that turned out to be working for this company for 10 years. Another one that comes to mind, because it did involve my life, is making decisions about your belief system, religion. What are your beliefs and how do you integrate that? If you were raised with something, with a religion or spiritual aspect to your life, maybe it was just a natural transition, but not always. Even I've known people who were raised within a church setting or raised within a certain belief system that still had decision points. And for, I'd say, many or most people, that still happens from childhood, now reaching adult and saying, so what do I really believe? How do I really want to practice my faith? How does this affect me? That was something that happened in my life as a young adult, because I wasn't raised with any kind of a formal or strict religious belief. And there came some points in my adult life where I made decisions around that, and they were impactful. 10 years is not a part-time job. It wasn't part-time. It was actually a full-time job, but it was supposed to be temporary. Jay, I thought I was going to be working there for a few months, and I kind of had a plan in mind. It was a point where I had been living out of town, actually living with my sister Kathy and her family in Utah, and moved back to Portland, and was considering going back to Utah at some point, and started working for this company because I needed money, and ended up being where I met Carol and our relationship flourished, and it also ended up being a company that I worked for 10 years and a career area that I stayed in for another 10 years with another couple of companies. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting how those things can affect you. So this is, I'm going to share some things from an article. This is from Psychology Today. It was actually from an article from June 30th, 2017, a few years back, but these ideas and principles stay the same. And it was an article written by Deborah L. Davis, PhD, who's a psychologist. And the title of this, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but how to mindfully make important life decisions. And she has 10 tips for mindfully choosing your best option when you're making major life decisions. She says, sometimes you're trying to think through, she says, you harness the power of your mind, think through the different things, the pros and cons, etc. She says, sometimes thinking seems to get you nowhere. Even after days of analyzing your options, you may be unable to effectively weigh the pros and cons, determine what you really want, or settle on what you think is best. How do you stop going around in circles? Have you ever been there? I have, in working through a major life decision. You feel like you're just spinning your wheels, going in circles. She says, plus, sometimes our minds lead us astray. How can you be sure you're not mistakenly rationalizing one option over others due to unwarranted fear or unfounded fantasy? Those are key, right? We've all been in those situations. So she says, in a word, mindfulness. Mindfulness means that you are conscious and aware, focused on the present moment, and able to calmly observe and accept all your feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. She says it also is about pausing, reflecting, listening to your inner wisdom. It means you can focus on the relevant information, know when to cut your losses, stay aware of your biases, and check your ego. Those are key too, aren't they? Says mounting research shows that mindfulness benefits decision-making. So these are 10 tips. And once again, I'm not going to go through everything that she says about them, but just some key points. Number one is slow down. Mindfulness means taking your time. Sometimes she says you can't always make a quick decision. Says there are situations that are urgent, sometimes a medical emergency or sudden time-limited offers. But this is then mindfully gauge your gut reaction. Otherwise, take the time you need to reflect on your priorities, your goals, and your values. There's a little bit more to it, but those are key. Number two, accept that making important decisions can be hard, right? We sometimes go, I should just be able to figure this out. It's not always easy. Big decisions often have big, long-lasting consequences. Even when the outcome is happy, you may have doubts. We've all dealt with that as well. So she talks through some decisions can be heart-wrenching to make, even when you're certain your choice is for the best. Instead of wishing a big decision were easier, honor the fact that it's not, nor should it be. Number three, aim for integrity. This means being true to your authentic self, your priorities, and your values. If an option requires that you compromise your ethics, downplay your priorities, or go against your nature, that's a red flag. Have we ever been there? I have been there. I have been there where I've had to measure things against those main priorities and make a decision. Number four, aim to reduce your stress. Reducing the stress in your life is good for your physical health and mental health, both of which are keys to living a contented, fulfilling life. She talks about if you reduce stress, you're going to be in a much better place to make decisions and to live with those decisions. Number five, understand that there are many paths that can nurture your soul. Right? It's not always that if I choose this one, there's going to be a good outcome. If I choose that one, I'm screwed. Sometimes there are two choices. And you remember the poem? Have you ever read the poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken? And he talks about two roads in a yellow wood, and he chooses the one that has less wear. And the key to that poem is we often think of as being, well, you're supposed to choose the path that doesn't have as much wear to it. And he says that toward the end of the poem, Robert Frost writes that he looks back over where he's walked and sees that they've both been worn about the same. And he says, I chose the path less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. But what difference? Part of the reality of that poem and part of the reality of life is that sometimes you can choose one path over another, and either of them can be a proper decision, and you may never know what might have happened if. But you made a decision. And so you can choose sometimes more than one thing. It's not always about black and white. Sometimes there's more than one path that can be a good decision. Number six, go with the flow. taking the path of least resistance is often the best option. Whether the funding comes through, or you've been eager for an opportunity like this, or you finally feel at home, or your friend keeps trying to set you up on a blind date, it's as if life is presenting you a neon sign that reads, go this way. Even if you're skeptical about stars aligning, grab the brass ring whenever it's handed to you. And again, point there being, sometimes you don't have to push too hard against what just seems the natural direction. Number 7, breathe. This kind of goes with the reduce stress. If you're faced with an opportunity that involves leaving your comfort zone, it's normal to feel hesitant or fearful at the prospect. But feeling scared doesn't necessarily mean you should shy away from that option. Sometimes the right choice is the brave choice, particularly because it can entail positive change, new skills, and worthwhile risks. But how can you tell if you're cringing because it's requiring you to stretch and grow, or cringing because it's truly not right for you? Here's how. Physiologically, the difference between fear and excitement is breath. If something seems scary, by mindfully taking some deep breaths, you may transform your fear into excitement. With deep breathing comes relaxation, which can change your thoughts from danger, do not proceed, to thrilling, proceed with excitement. Interesting advice. Number 8, focus on being, not doing. What you do is not as important as who you are. Strive to be trustworthy, responsible, and kind, and you will attract people with the same stripes. Likewise, what you do isn't as important as who you do it with. For example, which would you rather, dig ditches with a group of fun, trustworthy, kind people, or work your dream job with a group of mean-spirited, two-faced, manipulative people? It's not the doing, but the being that is most important. Wow. Now, I've been there in exactly that job situation she's talking about, where I've taken a job that may not have seemed ideal, but the people I worked with made it so. And I've pursued jobs that everything technically seemed right. You know, the pay was right, the job description looked right, but you get in there and the culture's wrong, the people are wrong, and you can't thrive. You can't enjoy that. It never feels like the right place to be. It never fulfills. You never end up getting up that Maslow's hierarchy of needs in that role, right? All right, and number 9, ask others to tell you about the hard decisions they've faced. And this is talking about, you know, asking people how they've worked through things, learning from other people's experiences. Again, understanding that someone else's experience is not necessarily going to be yours. But sometimes the talking through is both an aspect of those aha moments when you hear someone else go through, having gone through something similar, or maybe something completely different, but how they dealt with it. And you go, that's worth trying. Or just the talking it through and working it through with someone is part of that process. You ever been there where you're asking someone for advice and they say, what do you think? And as you talk it through, you find out that you're answering your own questions. Yeah. And then number 10, trust the process. Whatever you decide to do, it's impossible for you to make a wrong decision. Wow. Even if you have regrets with hindsight, you can learn extremely valuable lessons from mistakes and failures, lessons that can lead you down a path of even greater fulfillment. You can also adopt the calming perspective that your life will unfold as it should, which means you're always exactly where you belong, and you'll leap when you're ready and able. When that time comes, keep a calm, open, curious mind and watch the net appear. Even if you feel caught between a rock and a hard place, take heart. By tapping into your gut's wisdom and harnessing your brain's mindfulness, you can determine the path that is best for you. Some good advice in there. Yeah, I like that, Kathy. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. You know, and I think there's reality to that. I don't know if I would necessarily agree 100% or use the same phrasing that this author, again, Deborah L. Davis, PhD, and her description says about the author at the bottom of the article. Let me just give the credit here. She is a developmental psychologist and the author of 6 books, including one about perinatal hospice titled A Gift of Time. So, I mean, obviously she's knowledgeable. She has a great perspective. And I would say I agree 99% with everything she said. You know, I think you take all of this in its overall flow. None of these steps or none of these ideas are mutually exclusive from the others. Trusting the process is also about making sure that you're making decisions with integrity, right? It's going to be hard to trust the process and say, I didn't make a wrong decision if you know that you have compromised central values that really put you in a bad place. Even with all of that said, I do agree that every life decision that you make, unless it's one that has terminal consequences, life decision of seeing if you can fly without wings or a parachute is probably not a good life decision in terms of what you can learn from that. You're going to learn on the way down, but it's going to be a very short lesson. But most of life's lessons, while they may have consequences, are also learning opportunities. How many of you, along with me, have learned some of your best lessons that you've taken forward with you because of a decision you made, a choice you made that had negative consequences, something you learned from? That you said, yeah, I learned, I've been in job situations that I hated the job, but in retrospect, I recognize how much I learned from being in that role and working for that company, even where I was working with people who I didn't enjoy working with. What a great experience that we can take forward in life, right? During my younger years, having dating experiences that didn't go well and having some that were very positive and beneficial helped prepare me for my 42 years since I met her with Carol. Do I not appreciate those experiences that ended negatively or that had some heavy negative emotion? No, because in retrospect, they were very worth the while. So listen, we are out of time here, and I want to end as we always do, properly. But I want to tell you what's coming up as we do this. And I want you to continue, post your comments, post your ideas about, hey, I learned from this too, right? I'm certainly not at a place in my life where there are never any life decisions or I find them easy. Just like you, I still have to face decisions on a regular basis, not necessarily on a daily basis that are major life decisions, but I've had decisions in the last year. I think many of us have made decisions in the last year around some of the issues that were taking place with COVID, and it's not over. And looking ahead to life decisions that Carol and I are considering together, and the timing for some of those decisions. Continue to share your ideas. We learn from them. All right. Thank you, and thank you for sharing in here. Thank you for being here today. I want to tell you it's coming up next week. Our episode, Chew on This, we're going to talk about eating habits. Where, are you one of those people who inhales your food? Do you really take your time? Are you a slowpoke when you eat? How do you go about your process of meal making? And we're calling it Chew on This. It's really about our eating habits and how we eat. Including such things were you raised in a setting or a culture where belching at the meal was a sign of respect and a compliment to your host, or are there certain things you just don't do at the table? We were raised with certain do's and don'ts when you were at the dinner table. And even going about things like, do you sit down and across the table from others in your household when you have a meal and use that time in certain ways, or is it with a TV tray or on your lap in front of the television? Or how do you go about eating? We're going to have some fun conversations about that. That's next week. And then coming up in a couple of weeks, we're going to do something, I mentioned it before, it's called Mad Lib Theater. And you may have seen there are some shows on TV that have used this concept. Jimmy Fallon does it at times, where we're going to be starting with a script, but with blanks. You're going to help us fill in the blanks with certain words like a Mad Lib. And then Shalane and I are actually going to do a reader's theater based on that finalized script. It's going to be a fun game. I also want to hear from you. And you can put this in the chat, or you can message me privately. But what are some topics you would like to see us discuss on Coffee Breaks with Steve? Even ideas for guests in the future are welcome. I would like to know what's interesting to you. This is your conversation. I want you to be a part of it. So share those ideas. You may think, well, that's wacky, or that's something that he couldn't possibly do. Always considering things I couldn't possibly do. I've reached out to several full-fledged celebrities to ask them to be guests. I've even heard back from a few. But, you think, well, that's ridiculous. Those people don't have the time and they're not going to pay attention to you. You never know. Topics. What's a good topic for us to talk about together? Share those. I want to hear them. Even if it's something we've talked about in the past, enough time may have gone by, it's time to talk about it again. All right, listen, thank you once again for being here. Those are just some things that are coming up, and we'll be sharing more. We will be back next week, not taking another day. Oh, I was going to tell you what we did. I'll do that really quick. We had Remy and Jameson with us, our oldest grandsons, and we took the day, we went down to San Jose and toured Winchester Mystery House, which Carol and I have been at in the past. Remy and Jameson had been there as carry-alongs when they were really little. They didn't remember it. They loved it. They were really intrigued with the history of that house. If you've ever been there or heard about the Winchester Mystery House, Sarah Winchester's house that she never stopped building onto because she thought spirits were haunting her because of her family's involvement in developing, creating the Winchester rifle that killed a lot of people in the frontier days. And then we went and had a wonderful lunch at the Spaghetti Factory. And it was just nice to kind of break away and really focus on the boys, get them out of the house for a while. So thank you again for last Saturday, but let's look ahead to the next Saturdays coming up. And I'll just tell you what I tell you every week, my friends. Find a way to make a difference in your world this week. You can do it. We all can. We make a difference every time we reach out to people, every time we reach out into our community. So make that happen. God bless you. Take care. Have a great week.